Welcome to The Art of Medicine, the program that explores the arts, business, and clinical aspects of the practice of medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Andrew Wilner. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Renee Fleming, a Grammy Award winner and recipient of the National Medal of Arts. Renee is a world renowned soprano who has brought the experience of classical music to millions of fans. In 2023, Renee was appointed by the World Health Organization as a Goodwill Ambassador for Arts and Health. Renee is also the editor of a new book, Music and Mind, Harnessing the Arts for Health and Wellness. In a few minutes, she's going to tell us about her musical journey, duet with Francis Collins, and inspiration for music and mind. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, locumstory.com. Maybe you're curious about locums and how it might fit into your career story, but you know all the different reasons physicians choose locums and how it works for them? At locumstory.com, you can hear firsthand stories as diverse as physicians themselves. There's not one solution for everyone. The variety of opportunities might surprise you. Locum Story is an unbiased educational resource. It has tools that let you explore trends in your specialty and compare different locums agencies. There's even a simple quiz to see if locums is right for you. Do your own research at locumstory.com. It's easy. And now to my guest. Welcome, Renee Fleming.
Hi, and thank you, Andrew. It's great to be here.
Yeah, as I said, I am thrilled. I have had a poet and a composer on the show, and probably a few guests who sing in the shower, but you are my first professional singer. So, I'd like to start. I think people listening, I was going through your bio and it's just so extensive. The award list, we could fill up our whole 25 minutes with that. But I want to know how did that start? Were you 3 years old and you screamed and the wine glasses shattered? I mean, how did you know you had a gift that was worth pursuing?
Well, you don't know actually, and it was kind of in my family. It was as natural as sports are in other families and other pursuits. So we all sang. We all pursued music and studied instruments. My parents were both high school vocal music teachers growing up. So and we had wonderful music programs in our own respective schools as well. So it was very natural to me to continue on that track. I mean, the only other thing I thought about becoming was First Lady President, which unfortunately is still open. It's not happened yet. I can't believe it. But I continued on the path of singing because it was natural, and I became very passionate about it at some point. I loved the practice room. I loved solving these intractable and challenging problems of becoming a virtuosic singer with this repertoire of 300 years.
I still want to know, when did somebody say to you, you have a special voice?
Not for a long time, and people appreciated my musicianship. They appreciated, I would say, I was a hard worker, and I mastered a lot of these skills. But I didn't get beautiful voice until I was probably in my late 20s or so. That somebody, I think it was actually in a review that said something about my voice. And I brought the review, like holding the paper, to my voice teacher and said, look, somebody thought I had a beautiful voice. It's because I was under the impression that I had some gifts, but that wasn't one of them. And then, of course, I also, when I was very young, it didn't sound particularly compelling, but I was putting together a kind of an understanding of vocal technique that has stood me in very good stead, because I'm still singing, and most careers are shorter than this.
Yes, yes. So when's your next concert?
Well, I opened at the Metropolitan Opera yesterday in the opera The Hours, and so I have performances all month until the 31st of May. And then I go back on tour. So it's my schedule hopefully is on my website, but it's very busy. And we don't announce things actually. It's like every 3 months we'll add some more, because presenters want to be able to be the ones to say that I'm coming.
Ah, okay. Well, once again, I'm very grateful that you're taking a half hour of your off time. to chat with me. So let's talk about the healing powers of music. When did that become interesting to you?
Well, I became interested a long time ago because I was having issues with my own singing, mainly somatic pain. I had a lot of pain that would distract me or convince me to stop singing because of performance pressure. And it went kind of hand in hand with anxiety and stage fright. And so I just kept reading, things that I could find, trying to learn a little bit about mind-body connection, et cetera. And I discovered that scientists were researching music in the brain, and I thought that was interesting. So I met Dr. Francis Collins at a dinner party and said, "Why is this?" And I had just been appointed artistic advisor to the Kennedy Center, and I said, "I think we could work with the NIH, National Institutes of Health, and provide a platform for science with the public, with the audience, because I think everybody would be fascinated to know why scientists are studying music." And it's been a fantastic journey ever since.
And I guess that was the seed for the book. Tell me about the book.
So I did a webinar during the pandemic that's still online and interviewing a lot of interesting people. And then I interviewed David Rubenstein, who has written several books, but they're based on interviews that he's given. Many of the books are. And so I thought, wow, that's a great model. There are so many people that I know now that the sort of the spectrum and the breadth of the field now of arts and health is so broad. And I said, I'd love to kind of have another way of getting the message out. I consider myself to be a chief advocate or chief cheerleader for the sector. And so it actually turned out, as very often is the case with me, to be a very large project. I didn't realize how hard it would be. It took us almost 3 years to do this. And the book has come out, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm glad it was worth all the effort.
Yes, well, I have a PDF copy and I read the chapter. There was an essay about performance, and then there was another one about music and autism. And I see that the essays are really very, very broad. And
Right.
I know, if I remember correctly, you were in the MRI machine. Tell me what that was all about.
Yes, I myself participated in an fMRI study at the NIH that had me imagining singing and speaking. And what was fascinating was, and there were various scientists who were actually checking out the results and analyzing the results, and they were all kind of surprised that imagining singing had more effects on my brain than the other two, by far. And so ultimately they decided it had probably to do with the fact that I'm a singer. So singing in the machine was not particularly difficult for me. And imagining singing took a little more effort, but it's fascinating to me that music impacts every known mapped area of the brain, unlike pretty much any other activity. And it's because the only way I can understand this is evolution, that it's been with us for so long and it's kind of everywhere, that we're engaging with music and sound all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. And so and now we're discovering these therapeutic value. The researchers are really finding some incredible things. And so I've come to believe that the art should be embedded in healthcare.
Well, I'll just enter a little anecdote. About 10 years ago, I was at the Cleveland Clinic with my mother, who had just had major heart surgery. And it was kind of rough going post-operatively. And I spent a fair amount of time with her. And one day, a music therapist came by the room,
Ah,
and she had a guitar, and she just said, would you like me to sing, or would you like to do some singing? So I said, okay. I learned to play the piano as a child, and I like to sing, but no one would pay me to sing for sure. They might pay me not to sing, but I do enjoy singing. And within a few minutes, my mother and this therapist and I were singing at the bedside. And it's really one of the most, it was incredibly emotional. And it's one of the most memorable sort of 10 minutes of the 3 weeks that I spent with her in the hospital. And I think it was very therapeutic.
Yes, absolutely. That makes perfect sense to me. And it also affected you. So it's not just the patient, it's the family, it's the caregivers, it's the whole ecosystem, even the people who are in the hospital as healthcare workers benefit. And we saw this in long with COVID because the morale was so low and they really needed support as well. So and it's and the interesting thing is certainly for patients who are struggling with dementias, or traumatic brain injury for that matter, it is the last memory to go. It's music memory. And that's something, people are imagining now, and the medicine is imagining that this, or thinking this probably has to do with the fact that it's in a part of the brain that is affected last by the disease. But it's still very clear that the engagement with music brings people back to themselves for the period of time that they're doing it. So there's a lot of research now. People are trying to extend that period of time and try to maintain or stave off some of the effects of the disease.
Right. The other thing, as I was flipping through the book, was this concept of inclusivity and connectedness. When people sing together, or even an audience, as you're very familiar with, right? When an audience is together listening to you sing, for example, there's a bond that happens, even though these people are all different and don't even know each other.
Now,
Would
there
you?
are new studies about our brain waves aligning actually when we're in a shared artistic experience, especially a musical experience. And so that's got to have some history with us, with our tribalism, with the fact that music, drumming, chanting, these were all used for social cohesion throughout our history as human beings. And so we don't evolve very quickly, so that's all still there.
Right, and I think social cohesion is something we could all use more of.
Definitely.
So it would be nice to pursue this. As a neurologist, it's interesting to me. We're just getting tools like functional MRI where we can see what's happening in the brain. The brain still remains pretty mysterious, but being able to study the power of music and associated with Parkinson patients, for example, they may have trouble walking, but with music they can move better. They can dance, but maybe can't walk. So a lot of interesting pathways in the brain.
Well, and as a neurologist too, it's wonderful that chronic diseases and diseases of aging, really disorders of aging, can really be positively impacted by engagement with the arts. And so that's something that I find very hopeful. Pain is another powerful area of the research right now because we're having, terrible epidemic with pain and opioid addiction, et cetera. So there are really meaningful possibilities by engaging with these interventions, but also when you think about singing is now being studied. For instance, postpartum depression is alleviated by singing in a choir. But Jacqueline Kalinsky's chapter on cardiac failure and singing really shocked me. She's now getting a lot of funding from the NIH because she found that just singing twice a week, and this was the Star Spangled Banner, which is not easy, by the way. I know I sang it at the Super Bowl, and it has massive benefits in the vascular health and endothelial function. So she'll continue to pursue that line. And I think the idea is that people with cardiac failure, for them, singing is exercise. These are
Sure.
people who are sedentary and who can really benefit from. I mean, I know it's exercise, but I'm singing opera, which is the heavy lifting of singing because we don't use microphones.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Right. It is kind of incredible. I mean, I performed yesterday and I look around the stage and I think, wow, look at the sound that all of these individuals are making. And there are 4,000 people in the audience, plus a full orchestra, and yet everyone can be heard. It's our training.
Do you have to monitor the usage of your voice? Like, I'm not talking anymore today because I'm singing tomorrow, or are you just like a regular person? You just
I,
talk.
I'm regular with one exception, one notable exception, which restaurants kill me. I can't speak well over a lot of noise. And it's the style now to have the louder the louder the restaurant, the better. and I can't go. So that's unfortunate because I miss that kind of social outlet. But I'm waiting for someone to start a chain called Calma, which has a lot of carpets and a lot of fabric, upholstery, etc., curtains to kind of dampen that sound.
Well,
It's
it's great.
also hard for people to hear. It's hard to hear over it too.
I was just going to say that's the reason I don't go is because I can't hear anything. Once with all that background noise, I lose my sort of ability to discriminate the speech sounds. So it tends to be a little isolating.
Yes,
Yes, and you're used to a quiet audience when when you talk.
that's right. That's right. Well, and yeah, I don't, my speaking voice is when I'll go to a party once in a while and somebody will say, God, I expected you to be a lot louder. I said, no, no, just the singing.
Before we wrap up, I know you have another book, Inner Voice. Would you like to say a few words about that?
I worked on that with Ann Patchett, and we wrote this about 20 years ago, so it was a long time ago. But it was a kind of a map for the process of learning how to sing in a way. That was the journey. It wasn't a sort of tell-all or and then I got applause. It was more the process of learning how to sing. So it's been very useful for young singers, also for their families and parents to say, oh gosh, thank you. Now I know why it's taking so long or why it's so expensive or who knows. But that was a really wonderful process. And of course, Anne and I are close friends now because she wrote the book Bel Canto, which everyone assumed was about me. And we hadn't even met yet. So I'm glad we did eventually meet. And she has a beautiful chapter in my book on really how she learned to love opera by writing Bel Canto. And the writer Richard Powers also has a beautiful chapter. It's about folk song as a proxy for grief. I mean, using folk
Ah,
song for us as humans to learn to discover our own emotional, um, our feelings that prepare us for loss that we will all eventually have.
right. So the new book is Music in Mind, which is available on Amazon. And I, I, a quick look was I think it's about 300 pages, so it's pretty dense, and it has a lot of different chapters, all connected by the theme of learning how music affects us as human beings.
Well, there's also theater and visual art and architecture in it as well. But music is definitely the foundation. But there are 41 chapters, some from artists, some from researchers, some from institutions. But it's not really, for the most part, it's something you need to sit down and read cover to cover. You can pick and choose your interests. There's a big section on childhood development and education, for instance, which might interest some. There's a section on the future, which is I find really fascinating, and then other therapies, etc. But it starts with neuroanatomy from Dan Levitin and Ani Patel's chapter on evolution, which kind of sets it up very nicely, and Nina Kraus on sound. So I tried to organize it in a way that people could look at the table of contents and say, well, I'm interested in creative learning, or I'm interested in the deep dive. I want to read really hardcore science. So, it's like I said, it's actually longer than 300 pages, but people shouldn't feel daunted by that.
Well, this has been a terrific discussion, Renee. Is there anything you'd like to add before we close?
Oh, wonderful job, Andrew. Great interview. Thank you.
Renee Fleming, thanks for joining me on The Art of Medicine.
Thank you so much.
Before we close, I'd like to give another thanks to our sponsor, locumstory.com, a resource where providers can get real, unbiased answers about locum tenens. I'm Dr. Andrew Wilner. See you next time.
This program is hosted, edited, and produced by Andrew Wilner, MD, FACP, FAAN. Guests receive no financial compensation for their appearance on The Art of Medicine. Andrew Wilner, MD, is Associate Professor of Neurology at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, Memphis, Tennessee. Views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this program belong solely to Dr. Wilner and his guests and not necessarily to their employers, organizations, or other group or individual. While this program intends to be informative, it is meant for entertainment purposes only. The Art of Medicine does not offer professional financial, legal, or medical advice. Dr. Wilner and his guests assume no responsibility or liability for any damages, financial or otherwise, that arise in connection with consuming this program's content. Thanks for watching. For more episodes of The Art of Medicine, please subscribe. www.andrewwilner.com